Welcome to the Real Bible Rob podcast. What a delight it is to invite Lynn Huber, professor at Elon University, back for another discussion about Revelation. And boy, what a topical thing to talk
Yeah.
about nowadays. And Lynn, you were very popular last time, and one of my one of the more popular guests that I've had, and I just was so intrigued with what you said, and I also read your commentary and loved
It's
it. So
big.
it is, and but it's personal and
hmm
and it really and I've read quite a bit about Revelation over the years and
hmm
found it very where they're trying to dissect everything and try to fit it into prophecy and stuff. And you don't do
Right.
that. You really talk,
Yeah.
yeah. You're definitely topical, but also a really wonderful commentary. So appreciate that very
Thank you.
much. Yeah.
Thank you. I
Uh,
do. I would recommend that whole series. It's a series that's
mhm.
published by Liturgical Press, and the commentaries, they're all kind of yeah, trying to blend sort of like attention to historical
Uh-huh.
context and to the literary context of the text with sort of thinking about what this means, what these texts mean, especially for readers who would identify as feminist, but
Uh-huh.
also just progressive, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think there's a there's a sense of the practical as well as the attention to kind of antiquity and how this text mean what this
Hmm.
meant in its original context. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Plus
it's a good series.
really solid scholarship and yeah,
Yeah,
and great
yeah.
references. Now, I believe they and the general editors are, is that Amy Jill Levine? Uh
Yeah, Amy Jill Levine was she was the New
oh,
Testament editor. So she
right.
went through the book carefully and offered a lot of very helpful feedback.
Hmm.
She's great.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And
I love
then
her stuff so much.
I know, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really she's great. And then but Barbara Reed
Okay.
is one of the general editors who yeah, she's sort of in charge of the whole thing. And
Uh-huh.
she's also, her work is also really excellent
Uh-huh.
biblical scholarship. She's a New Testament scholar. So,
Yeah, I have a friend who has a number of the volumes, especially Old Testament volumes,
hmm
and highly recommends it as well. So
yeah.
I definitely recommend yours. It's
Thank
really
you.
terrific. So one of the things I wanted to kind of really get into was sort of the different ways, and because you mention it over and over numerous
Yeah.
times, come back to Revelation 5:5 and
hmm
the identity of Christ, the identity either as Lion of Judah I should say the slain lamb.
hmm
And I'll start by very familiar. Of course, you're probably familiar with Mark Driscoll and what he says
hmm
about this. There was another the dichotomy of it, and I was reading about this in the negative use of this. It's called Hope Springs Ministries. I don't know if you know who they are, but
hmm
they're online and they contrast John 1:29, the Lamb of behold the Lamb of God who
Oh,
takes away the
yeah.
sins of the world,
Yeah.
and behold in Revelation 5:5, behold the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered.
Oh, interesting.
And of course their point is that Jesus came as a lamb, as a in person, and then will come again as a lion, even though
Yeah.
the text doesn't really say that. Uh,
hmm
so I've looked at
Yeah.
it as three different ways. There's that
hmm
interpretation, which is sort of the dominionist,
hmm
nationalistic interpretation. I've also looked at it as that the elder was wrong in saying
mm
that the scrolls only opened by the lamb. or by
Mhm.
the Lion of Judah, and that he's mistaken, and that really it's the slain lamb. But you take more of a, you take a little bit, you're also kind of, Jesus is both and shows up both, and that the change
Mhm.
of the lamb and the character of the lamb through the book really kind of tells us that. So I was wondering if you
Yeah.
could just sort of sort of maybe from a technical perspective or whatever, from a
Yeah.
textual perspective, you could explain the interpretation that you really highlight in this book, and then we can kind of go into how,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So yeah, so I mean it's gender it's not gender, it's Revelation 5 and 6. Those two
Uh-huh.
verses together, I think are really powerful to read together. The first one, um, John is really upset. He's in the throne room. The scroll has all these seals, which kind of indicates like, its importance.
Uh-huh.
The divine is holding this. And John begins to weep when nobody seems to be able to open it. And then he's
Mm-hmm.
reassured by an elder, like, don't worry, the Lion of Judah, the root of David will has conquered and will open the scroll. And so that conjures in the mind, right, this image of power and
Yes.
messianic authority. It's like it's a kingly image, it's a priestly image, it carries
Uh-huh.
all of this weight. And then John looks and he sees the slaughtered lamb, right? He
Mm-hmm.
turns and it's this moment, right? He hears about one thing, he sees the other thing. And in that moment, it's like the big reveal.
Yeah.
Which that's something I love drag, and in
Yeah.
drag it's the big reveal, right? When it's like, maybe somebody comes out and you're not quite sure what's going on, and then the costume comes off and it's like, hey, right? I'm a showgirl kind of thing.
Yes.
And it's this, and it's meant to, catch your attention.
Yeah.
And then things change, right? It's this
Uh-huh.
turning point. And it's not the only time John uses this technique. He also uses it in Revelation 7. He hears 104, he hears the 144,000. He hears
Yeah.
12,000 by 12,000 being counted off, and then he turns and he sees a sort of crowd that can't be numbered, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this happens twice in the text where hearing and seeing. And I guess on one hand, like, yeah, people will be like, okay, that means that, it's really the lamb, it's not the lion. It
Mm-hmm.
can't be one or both. I mean, it can't be both.
Mm-hmm.
But in Revelation, things can be whatever. I mean, things,
There's a lot of
John
shape
isn't
shifting.
bound,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think he's bound by this is a visionary thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is this is the lion, but it's also the lamb at the same time.
Mm.
And I think holding those things together, to me, it feels very Pauline, the idea of this paradox,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
The one who is the scandal, who's then also the Christ, right?
Uh-huh.
It's that sort of paradoxical idea, and it's a very gendered idea in antiquity. Um, and so yeah, so I think so I use the language in the commentary about the lamb being kind of gender queer, which
Yeah.
means sort of like not in any kind of not categorizable in terms of gender. Um, and that, yeah, the one who conquers through being slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier in the text, it describes Christ on the cross as someone who's pierced, which is a very kind of
Right.
feminizing image,
Yeah,
or
yeah. The
non-ideal
you
masculinity.
use the word penetrated, or the penetrator
Yeah,
and the penetrated. Yeah.
yeah, that's really common way of thinking about antiquity, how they understood masculinity and femininity. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily about somebody's biological sex, but it's about like position and rank and hierarchy,
Yeah.
and one who's on top and one who's on bottom. And that's how gender's understood in that
Mm-hmm.
context. And I think here we see somebody who, or we see a character who embodies this kind of feminine position, but who's then named as this sort of Messiah, which is a really kind of masculine, hyper masculine kind of image. So
Uh-huh.
I think the lamb is both is what's going on. And I do think it gets carried through in a lot of parts of the text,
Yeah.
especially in the image of the 144,000.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
and that becomes the model for following Christ.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned the classic clobber verse of 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10
Right.
about, and you mentioned that it's not really the biological sex of the Malakoi,
Yeah.
the submissive one. It's the fact that they're in that penetrated position rather,
Right.
and that the arsenokoitai is the um, is the penetrator, the dominant one.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
yeah, Malakoi is so yeah. So I mean, in some sense, that's how Christ is being described here as
mhm.
one who is some people I can't remember who it was has talks about interpreting that term Malakoi as softy,
Yeah,
right? Like somebody
yeah,
who's soft, somebody who's um yeah, not masculine, not hard body, right?
yeah, yeah. The soft
So
ones, I believe, right? Is
yeah,
it's a
is how some
preposition, or yeah,
yeah, yeah, or
or I mean
yeah,
a participle. Yeah,
adjectives. It's an
yeah,
adjective
adjective. Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, adjective that's used as a noun or something. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't remember
yeah.
what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions I had was in Genesis 49, 8 through 10, that's where we hear about the Lion of Judah. And it's a
Hmm.
very it's a prophetic thing that
Hmm.
uh, the idea that Judah will become the dominant tribe and
Right.
basically push everyone else down. So it's a lot of image. It's an image of violence
Right.
and control and domination.
Hmm.
And it seems to be that's the image that some people who want to use a revelation for violence grab onto, and they
Right.
say, well, Jesus is going to be like that. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, there's sort of a parallel, maybe is this parallelism that we're talking about between the lion and the lamb in the sort of the Hebrew sense, or
Hmm.
is that a way to think of it, or
It might be. I haven't thought about parallelism for a long time,
uh-huh,
so I'm not sure technically. I tend to think of it in terms of metaphor,
okay,
and cognitive. So, cognitive theory is this idea that we have like these conceptual spaces in our brain that
uh-huh,
we think of ideas like lion and lamb, and we have these concepts and we associate with lion. We tend to associate things like strength and
yeah,
dominance and kingship and meat eater and
yeah, yes,
large mane and
uh-huh,
like all of these things. And then with lamb, we tend to think of, you know, grass eater,
yes,
smaller, small animal, or I mean, relatively small, like
right,
potential sacrifice, maybe food. We think
uh-huh,
of it prey, other
right,
predator. And
uh-huh,
we have these ideas, and then we bring them together, and it's both and. Um, and
okay,
it sort of creates this conceptual blend in our head of, a lion that's a lamb, and and then that's what John is communicating, this kind of blended idea.
uh-huh,
And that
uh-huh,
blended idea then, I think, gets threaded throughout the book. I mean, Christ at the end, there isn't that image of Christ in Revelation 19 where
yes,
he comes on a horse,
uh-huh,
and it is a violent image, right?
yeah,
Of Christ. Um, I think is a complicated image, but yeah, I mean, in some sense, Revelation shouldn't be left off get off the hook when it comes to
yeah,
violence.
yes,
But it
for sure.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's use for that. Yeah, it's sort of
yeah, it
retribution, right?
yeah, it definitely is. And I think so it can't be you can't let it off the hook. Um, but there are ways of thinking about it that are maybe more complicated. Like, yeah, what if the lamb what if in Revelation 19, what if the one on the horse was actually not the rider with the sword coming out of his mouth? What if,
Yeah, yeah.
it was the lamb? Things might look differently. But yeah, so I don't think you can let the book off the hook for what it says, but I do think like its images invite us to think about, what if, um and yeah, and also wants us to challenge like thinking about
Hmm.
masculinity and what it means to follow Christ. So,
Yeah. Well, and I guess the one thing that we can say, I think, without a doubt, is that it's not that Christ comes back only as a lion to
right.
replace the lamb image, because
Yeah.
the very,
No.
like you said, the very next verse is the slain lamb, and the lamb is throughout I mean,
Right.
I think the lion's only mentioned this one time
Yeah. Yeah.
in the book, right?
Lamb is the dominant image that
Yeah,
John uses, and back in when there is the New Jerusalem,
yeah,
the lamb is at the center of that. The lamb is goes through the text. It's the dominant image.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, there are moments when we see not the lion, but we see other manifestations of Christ um, that maybe contradict how we understand the
yeah,
lamb.
yeah. And the lamb has horns, I think, right? At
Yeah,
least, yeah, which
yeah,
is odd if we think of the lamb being the slain lamb being only submissive, but also has horns. So,
right.
um,
That's why I think the language of genderqueer is helpful.
uh-huh.
It's not a image that falls neatly into traditionally gendered categories, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think that that's then again the model that John sets up
Uh-huh.
unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know, for his audience, but he plays with ancient gender ideas,
Uh-huh.
even if he doesn't know it. So,
Yes. Well, that's the
yeah,
thing, whether intentional or not, this kind of, and we were talking about this before, but it's a mocking of the masculinity and the power of the Roman Empire.
yeah.
Is it your view that that's a lot of his intention is to be that mocking, or to to make it not such a the Roman Empire not to be so scary for people, or
Yeah, I think it's not that well, it could be about not wanting it to be scary, but I also think it's like not he wants people not to emulate it.
okay.
Um and so um I think so I tend to think of what's going on in Asia Minor as like people are eager, not
Hmm.
eager, but people embrace and accept Roman rule. Um
Yeah.
and And I can imagine that the people who are Jesus followers, for some of them, it's the same thing, right? Like,
Right.
it's like, okay, this is not a bad thing. Like, there's this great scene in Monty Python's Life of Brian. What have
Uh-huh.
the Romans done for us? I don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen that movie, but it's
yes.
like where, they're plotting against the Roman Empire and they're like, what did the Romans ever do for us? And they're like, well, they brought
Right.
roads, healthcare,
Right.
sanitation, wine, right? And I think there's something similar maybe going on in Asia Minor, where we do actually have evidence of sort of people embracing imperial cults and imperial religion.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an attempt to like, poke holes in the narrative of the Roman Empire,
Uh-huh.
and that through humor, um, through I mean, it's like he's trying to throw everything at it. So
Yeah.
it's, on one hand, it's like, okay, we have something stronger and more, you know, with God on the throne. So we have power. It's like I'm
Hmm.
trying to bring down the Roman Empire by asserting the power of our God, but then also making fun of them, also like calling us to resist them. So he's really trying to use all the tools in his toolbox, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of them's humor, um, and mocking the supposed masculinity um, of the empire and
Yeah,
their
like yeah,
their
kind of
embrace of it.
like you said, maybe that masking, or kind of like a um, like a drag queen or a show or
Yeah.
something like that, maybe mocking them a little bit, saying, "Oh, well, you're putting on your masculinity show by being Roman,
Right.
right?" Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what I really think is going on with that image of the beast. And I know
Hmm.
when you emailed, you mentioned in the commentary, I do talk about the image of the beast with all the horns
Yes.
and as kind of this mocking, yeah, this mocking image of what Roman masculinity looks like.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
beast needs needs 10 horns because it feels inadequate.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yes. You even said that. It's kind of like it's overcompensating
Yeah,
in a
it's
way.
totally
Yeah.
overcompensating.
I,
I don't
I,
just have one, I've got 10. And
I
you know,
described it as over the top everything, including the kitchen sink beast with its
right, it
phallic
is.
imagery.
Yeah, yeah. And Romans did like some phallic humor. And
Yeah.
so I think it's also using the tools of the empire kind of against itself.
Uh-huh.
So I think it would have been legible as humor, just seeing if a lot of people go and they visit Pompeii when
Uh-huh.
they
Yes.
go to Italy, and everybody goes to the brothel to when
Yeah.
they visit Pompeii, and there's this image in the middle of the brothel with the god Priapus or
Uh-huh.
Priapus, and in this image he has two uh phalluses and
Hmm.
or phalli, I guess he's biphallic,
Right. Get out your
and
Latin.
it's like it's kind of like which way do you go? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of directional sign, but it's also like it's humorous. It's meant to be kind
Uh-huh.
of funny. There's a couple things in Pompeii that are like humorous representations of this god.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so they like it. So this kind of thing is, it's cultural. It's part of their
Yeah.
so I think John is leaning into that and as a way of then critiquing the empire.
Yeah, and I think you see that throughout the New Testament. There's all kinds of tension about the local communities and their relationship with
Hmm.
Rome. I read a great Suzanne Kahn, I think, or Call is her name,
Okay.
and
Oh,
she's a Galatian scholar. And
Brigida call.
Brigida Call, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
KAHL. Yeah. Yeah. She
Kahl,
does that
and
work too.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing because it's this idea that uh, there was so much tension with their relationship with Rome as being in
Hmm.
Galatia. That's, those are Celtic people. Those are people,
Right.
and
Yeah.
Jewish diaspora. So their whole tension, it has this overhang of the Roman Empire, and I'm sure they had their ways of
Yeah.
poking fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think, I mean, for me, as someone who studies Revelation, I think it's always important to think about, yeah, what is the relationship between the text and the overarching culture, right? And it's different in different locations. So I think like the Gospels have a really different view of
mhm.
the relationship to Rome. I mean, I think there's um, it's more maybe present, the power of Rome
Yeah,
because of what happened in the 70s, the revolt against Rome
right,
and
right.
Judea. And
Because they're closer in time to the
closer
perhaps
closer
or
in time, but also I think they're probably more proximate to the death and destruction and the
oh,
enslavement of the people in Judea, whereas maybe the people in Asia Minor, they're a little bit removed. And I think
yeah,
it may like what happened in the revolt against Rome, I think is really present for John, but I do think maybe he's trying to get his audience to like see like, wow, there we see the
yeah,
destruction of the temple. We see massive loss of life and bloodshed. That's going to happen here, or this is what's
yeah,
on the
yeah,
horizon. And
yeah.
so,
We know what they're capable of. Yeah,
yeah. And if we take seriously like the idea when he's talking about the church in Laodicea, that they're kind of meh. They're kind of like, oh, we're wishy-washy, lukewarm
yeah,
on things. like he's like, no, you can't be. This is not the time to be,
Yeah.
kind of like pablomy. You need to step up.
You can't
And
be on
this
both
is a
sides. Yeah.
right. And then this is what stepping up looks like. It's not necessarily traditional masculinity, although he
Okay.
uses the language of traditional masculinity in the letters to the seven communities. But when we see the lamb, we realize, oh, wow, it means this kind of willingness to die,
Uh-huh.
um, this embodiment of this identity that isn't necessarily traditional masculinity, but that's what we're called to be.
Yeah,
So,
this is serious business, in other
yeah,
words. Yeah.
yeah.
And when I always think of Ephesians 6 in that way, is that,
Mm,
you know, slave uprisings and the putting on the
right.
breastplate and so forth is, yeah, this is, it may not happen to you, but you need to be
Yeah,
prepared for it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to touch on definitely on the beast, but also the woman clothed in the sun and the dragon.
Hmm.
And you talk quite a bit about the gender relationships there, and
Hmm.
and I think you mentioned chapter 5 in a little bit in this. So I was just wondering if you could
Probably do.
explain that a little bit. The
Yeah. You've cracked my code, which is I think I mean that Revelation 5 and 6 is like the heart of it. Like I do really
uh-huh,
think that that's the heart of the book. Um the interpretive key. And I'm not the only person who like highlights that, but
uh-huh,
also one thing before we move on to the woman clothed in the sun, I do just want to shout out my
yeah,
colleague Robin Whitaker. Um,
uh-huh,
you probably saw I reference her a lot in that
yeah, you
chapter of
do,
5.
yeah,
She's a biblical scholar and theologian in Australia. She does a lot of really
uh-huh.
great online content. She's on TikTok and a lot of places, but
Oh,
she
okay.
has a great essay called Victim Victor is it's in the title. It's about the lamb and uses the idea of it also kind of explores the paradox of the lamb in
Hmm.
terms of victim and victor, and it's really good. So
Huh. Yeah. That definitely comes, and that definitely comes out in your work here, is that you keep
yeah,
coming back to the well, the move toward the seals, right? And the
right,
opening of the seals and how that sort of sets things up for
yeah,
for
yeah,
later activities.
yeah,
For things,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
But
so yeah.
so yeah, so the woman clothed in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember how I tie Revelation 5 into that, but it's an interesting image, right? You have this woman
Hmm.
clothed in the sun, which is a very much a kind of evokes ancient goddess imagery. But
Hmm.
then you have John sort of um I think countering traditional goddess imagery um with this version. Um of the woman who's a sign. But and then there's this real emphasis on her child as a male child.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the importance of him being a male child who will then um, shatter the pots or shatter. I can't remember the language, but
Uh-huh.
the language is evocative of shattering pots with
Uh-huh.
his rod of iron. And it's, yeah,
Uh-huh.
again, very kind of phallic imagery
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um, that is highlighted for this male child who then gets snatched into heaven. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's it's a powerful image, that whole passage.
Yeah, and I'm trying to I don't know how to feel about it. I don't
Hmm.
know whether I like it or not, or whether what I should get from it. I guess
Hmm.
what should I get from it?
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
What do you read into it? Yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah. Let me turn it back on you. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's a number of things going on, and I think it really, um, I think John is challenging some of the importance of goddess imagery and worship
Uh-huh.
in antiquity, and I think he's also challenging the Roman imperial appropriation of that.
Okay.
There's some uh yeah, I mean, they're also kind of, embracing kind of goddess imagery, like Isis becomes really
Mm-hmm.
important for emperors like Domitian.
Oh,
And
uh-huh.
John is in some sense trying to, I think, relativize goddess worship. Um, and by showing the male child, so this maybe sounds like it's kind of going against what I was saying with the genderqueer lamb. We
Yeah.
will find that this male child is the lamb.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some challenging of those traditions,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to place those traditions within the context of what he understands as the history of Israel.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so this woman is kind of Israel. This later interpreters will associate this woman with the church. Some will interpret it with Mary,
Mm-hmm.
but it is like the origin of this lion lamb figure,
Uh-huh.
um, who then is the the center of attention and the center of tension. So you have the dragon fighting to get a hold of this figure who's going to upend things,
Yeah.
including upending things in terms of gender. Um, it's interesting because on one hand, John does, try to, I think, subvert or challenge or recontextualize goddess traditions
Uh-huh.
and imagery. But on the other hand, towards the end, he kind of evokes them, I think, I don't know, intentionally or unintentionally, with the image of the earth. At the end of the
Uh-huh.
text, Earth comes to save the woman who is being chased by the dragon. And the imagery of Earth, the language for Earth is the name of, essentially, it's like Gay or Gaia,
Mm-hmm.
um, who is an important goddess figure at the time period.
Right. Yeah, you
Um,
mentioned that. Yes. Uh-huh.
yeah. And so she comes to the aid of the woman clothed in the sun. And I think, maybe John is saying they're all in service of this one who will be the lamb, the lion and the
Oh,
lamb.
okay.
So,
Well, I mean, sometimes scholars talk about the imagery of Jesus replacing the cult of Artemis, right? And that
yeah,
Jesus has all the goodness of Artemis, can protect you in
yeah,
childbirth and all of that. And you don't have to go to Artemis. You've got Jesus. Is there a little
yeah.
bit of that in this too, you think? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to, I mean, obviously the people in Ephesus, Artemis is their big goddess, and
yeah.
this image evokes potentially Artemis as well as Isis. I think Isis is the most direct reference.
Hmm.
Um, but they're often all conflated. All
Yeah.
these sort of um, mother goddesses are often
Right.
conflated in antiquity. And so I think it's, again, trying to relativize it. And yeah,
Okay.
these things are somehow, they're maybe not replacing, but I mean, I think we can imagine audiences thinking about it in different ways. For some, it would be replacement. For others, it's maybe, you know, lifting up the male child
Okay.
over the goddess figure.
Like adding to
Um,
the pantheon. I mean, I always feel like
yeah,
that's sort of a Roman thing, or is
yeah,
like if you find a useful god, you can just add that god to
yeah,
the pantheon, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think, he obviously doesn't want people worshiping the emperor.
yeah,
And I don't think he wants people worshiping Artemis or Isis either,
uh-huh,
but he does kind of point how or he uses their imagery to talk about the sort of importance of this male child who goes to
right,
the throne.
yeah,
So they become kind of a plot device.
to point
Yeah,
toward Christ. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I feel like that's what Paul's doing, right? Is not really
yeah,
criticizing Artemis, but using Artemis as a tool to point toward Christ.
yeah. I mean, I mean, they're present, they're everywhere. So it's like
Yeah.
making, and putting them within the narrative of Christ. And they don't appear elsewhere than in the story, right? So they
Hmm.
are in this moment where you have this epic battle. It also evokes, I mean, Artemis, the goddesses, and Isis are not, it's not just the images that people are seeing. These stories of cosmic combat
Yeah.
are prevalent throughout the Mediterranean. So John is, in some sense, drawing on that and taking that and putting it in his
Oh,
narrative.
okay.
Um, so yeah, so I'm not sure if that's very helpful, but I think it's interesting. On one hand, he's very much like, don't eat food offered to other gods.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then you have this sort of inclusion of this god.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then this inclusion of Gaia as well. So you have like multiple references.
Right.
And so yeah, so on one hand, maybe it's inconsistency. On the other hand, maybe it's, trying to subvert them, trying to also kind of subvert the Roman Empire's appropriation of them.
Yeah. I mean, well, of
So,
course, a lot of modern people believe in cosmic battles, right? And
yeah.
that there's a hidden there's
Hmm.
hidden battles going on.
Right.
Of course, use revelation as their way of visualizing that, I suppose. And
Right. Well, we were talking before, I mean, about sort of the recent references to Armageddon
yes,
in the political sphere with the war in Iran, that sort of what's going on there is being framed in terms of um, in terms of revelation. And that's really common. That's not the first time that that
yes,
kind of language has been used.
yeah,
I mean, for some people that may be new, but like those of us who are familiar with kind of, I think, evangelical Christianity in the modern US know that
yeah,
that's often the language that people use, and they
right.
frame and authorize and their battles in terms of um, like being on God's side against the enemy. And the language of Revelation is easily appropriated for that.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, dispensationalism has crept into all corners of Christianity, and we
right.
all, whether we're Christian or not, or whatever kind of Christian we are, we deal with the fallout of that, and we
Yeah.
certainly are
Oh,
now.
definitely.
Yeah, and so yeah, and I mentioned to you before as well is that I just did a video on how people use we the people. They use the
Right.
Constitution, and they don't really believe in the Constitution, but they use it
Right.
when it suits their need, right?
Right.
As a weapon. And
Right.
I related that to Revelation. Clearly,
Yeah.
their Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, is,
Mhm.
and that his group of people are clearly using Revelation as their convenient, as their tool for this
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. But like I think, and this is like what you were saying, I mean, is that yeah, they're using it, but they only, again, it's like this picking and choosing parts, or their reading of Revelation emphasizes, the lion to the detriment to,
Right, yeah.
and they ignore the lamb, and they ignore the call um, to being slaughtered and pierced, and
Yeah.
ignore the call of, I mean, the image of the 144,000 virgins is like the image of discipleship in this book. And it's an image of being a virginal male who is
Uh-huh.
submissive to Christ, um, but willing to die, right? It's about death and martyrdom and
Yeah.
not lying. The big one. Not lying.
Yeah, yeah, they grab onto the domination violence while completely ignoring
Yeah.
the humility and the submission, which is, I would
Yeah.
say, probably most of the book, right? Much more
Yeah.
of the book than, yeah. So I guess, and so it's um, so important now. I think that more people understood this. I think if more people understood, it'd be better. And
Yeah.
so I really wanted to also touch on the idea of the great prostitute in
Hmm.
and um, because that's also used as in a as a weapon, essentially,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
big way.
Right.
And seeing Babylon as the world, right? That
Right.
world out there, without realizing, well, maybe you're maybe you're fighting for the beast more than you think you are, you know. Maybe
Right.
you're maybe you're more Babylon than the people you're saying is Babylon. So I wonder if you could kind of talk about, because you talk quite a bit about it in the book, about
Yeah.
that role,
Yeah.
that negative image and how it's used by John. And
Yeah. So, yeah, I do spend a lot of time. Partly, John spends a lot of time. He spends two whole chapters on Babylon, and the image of Babylon as great prostitute who rides on the backs of the kings of the earth and on the beast, and then shifts to imagining Babylon primarily as a city, and then lingers on the imagery of Babylon's destruction.
hmm
And so he spends a lot of time on that imagery, which I do think is also part of his critique of the Roman Empire. I mean, Babylon is an easy way of signaling the Roman Empire to his readers, um, who would have made the connection between Babylon and Rome because of the destruction of the temple.
uh-huh.
And so I think, and the fact, he describes this character as sitting on seven hills and
Yes,
on
right. Yeah.
waters, right? It's all very evocative of Rome during this time period. Although I don't think it's just Rome. I mean, I think it's these kinds of political powers.
Yeah.
Um, but in his immediate context, that's Rome. Um, and I think it's one of the things it's doing is depicting Rome in a way that Rome doesn't want to be depicted.
Yeah.
Rome, the sort of feminized image of Rome in antiquity was as the goddess Roma, who is associated with purity,
Uh-huh.
and Roman matrons are also called to like purity and domesticity
Yeah.
um, and instead of you know depicting Rome in those terms, which is the Roman script. John casts this Roma as Babylon and
Uh-huh.
just like leans into misogyny. He just like takes
Yeah.
the worst of Roman satire
Yeah.
and really leans into it with the image of the great prostitute. Um, and uh, Juvenal is an author I cite a lot in this
hmm
section. And I'm not the only person who makes this connection between how Juvenal also critiques Roman imperial leaders
Uh-huh.
with images of sex work. Um,
Oh, uh-huh.
by
Yes.
Juvenal depicts one of the Messalina, who's an imperial wife, depicts her as a prostitute and like the
hmm
lowest kind of denominator prostitute. And that's what John does too.
hmm
And so uses kind of similar imagery. And it's just violent. Um, and yeah, so it's critiquing Rome's vision of itself.
Yeah.
It's also, it also comes out of the Hebrew Bible prophets,
Yeah.
where cities are often depicted as women, and here then we have the destruction of this. And so, yeah, he depicts its destruction at the hands of the kings of the earth,
Uh-huh.
and it's a like violent kind of rape scene. Um, and um, yeah, it's one of the most fascinating to me. It's really fascinating image, and I
Yes.
spent a lot of time with it too because feminist scholars have spent a lot of time on this text or these
Yeah.
texts.
Yeah.
It's really kind of the place where we do a lot of our work. So,
Well, and it's kind of an intersection too, because obviously for Jewish uh converts or people who were very familiar with the Hebrew Bible, it's the central thing in the Hebrew Bible is, 600 years before those
right, the
Babylonians came
destruction. Yeah,
and basically, raped Jerusalem, right?
right,
And Judah.
right,
And so
right.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it'd be kind of interesting to know how many Gentile people whether they get that imagery too, or they got
Yeah.
that imagery too. But um,
Yeah. Well, I think that that's why I think, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the text is speaking, like, we don't know the makeup of John's audience. I mean,
yeah,
John is Jewish. Like, a lot of the Christian communities in Asia Minor during this time are probably Jewish,
yeah,
but but, they are also, even if you're Jewish, you're also familiar with the myths and stories of Rome as well and
yeah,
Roman propaganda. So I think like the idea of this as maybe drawing on Hebrew Bible traditions, definitely. I mean, that's like clearly John is like
hmm
pulling pieces out of the Hebrew Bible, but also like mapping them onto this image of Roma, this goddess
oh yes,
of
right,
Rome. And so in some sense, it doesn't need the Hebrew Bible parts don't necessarily need to be legible for the audience to get what he's doing. And
yeah.
that's critiquing Rome. Um, so I think it's would be easy for people across the board to understand. I mean, it's not very veiled. It's
No,
pretty,
well, and certainly because sex work was so prominent in Rome, right? So
yeah, yeah,
they
it's
could
legal.
identify with there. Yeah, it's legal. It's everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's everywhere, but it's also like really I mean, like today, right? Like sex
hmm
work is we vilify the sex workers and then protect those who are, you know, involved on the other side in the trafficking,
Yeah,
in the um
in
you know,
pornography
in
and all.
pornography,
Yeah,
in, you know, in, taking advantage of trafficked women and girls or
yeah.
young men and boys. Um, yeah, so
Also
we
very
protect.
topical today, isn't
I
it?
know. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't going to say it, but yeah, I mean, it just seems like, yeah, we protect the people who are the perpetrators of the crime and then vilify
hmm
the people who are the victims. And that's definitely the case in Rome too. They associate it with like dirtiness and stench
Yeah,
and a lot of the people involved in those trades in antiquity, like today, were enslaved. So,
yeah, yeah.
but I do think so. One of the most um, popular pieces I've written in my history as a scholar is one in this book called Bible Trouble, and it's about queer biblical interpretation, and
Uh-huh.
it's about this image. And the article is called "Gazing at the Whore." And I try not to
Oh,
use that language anymore
yeah,
of horror
yeah,
because I do, and I talk about this in the commentary. It just, it is really just like kind of hateful language.
yeah.
But I do talk about that image in that article about how, um, yes, it's a critique of Rome. Yes, it's a critique of empires. But I think it's also a critique. It's an opportunity for readers to reflect on their role in empire.
hmm
Um, and in that article or that essay, I talk about it as a chance to, as a queer woman, as someone who's a lesbian
hmm
and but white and
Right.
middle class, upper middle class, educated, who's easily co-opted into like, there's so much like advertising that's aimed at my demographic, like trying to get
Yeah.
me to watch shows or, you know,
Uh-huh. Sure.
go on vacation. Like there's a in this context, there's so much trying to lure people in that I think that
To
this image,
monetize them, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think this image is a call to think about like what is our role in empire? Like, are
Uh-huh.
we sort of complicit in the sins and crimes of Babylon? And um, yeah, because at the beginning of seeing this image, like John is kind of like awed by her. And
Uh-huh.
I think like, yeah, on one hand, it's a really appealing image. Empire is something that, I want the
Yeah.
latest thing or,
Right.
I want my iPhone or
Yeah.
and
It gives many benefits. Pax
right.
Romana, right?
Yeah, exactly. I
Right.
kind of am comfortable and
Yeah.
I don't want things to change. I mean, I do want things to change. I'm not really
Yes.
saying that, but
Of course, yeah.
the appeal
Yeah.
is real. And I think this is an image that invites kind of reflection into, yeah, what it means to be part of that.
Well, when I put my pastor hat on, I said, this is a good use of scripture, is
Yeah.
to see yourself and your relationship with power dynamics and what
Hmm.
the relationship of what these people were dealing with and how it helps us in understanding better how what we deal with. It's a much better use of scripture than trying to divine, prophecy from it or the
Right.
future from it. That I think that's one thing that comes out of your book. But I think just a healthy reading, a healthy engagement with Revelation is you go, oh,
Yeah.
well, that's not. I recognize those people. They're kind of like what I deal
Yeah.
with it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're in the world's strongest empire ever,
Right.
and
Yeah.
nowadays, and not
Yeah.
much different.
Right. And I think, I mean, for me, again, I think that Revelation, yeah, people do want to talk about Revelation in terms of a blueprint. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I think that that's just not, I don't normally go back to like authorial intention, but like John is really
Uh-huh.
writing this wanting aimed at audience members and wanting them to change their relationship to empire.
Uh-huh.
And wanting them to change their relationship to God and the Lamb, wanting them to just change their way of being with the world.
Hmm.
And I think, like, if you take it that way, we might not agree with all of what John says,
Right.
but it can be a tool for reflection and thinking about, yeah, am I serious about God being on the throne? Am I
Hmm.
serious about worshiping God along with the rest of creation? Am I serious about like following the lamb wherever the lamb goes? And
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
maybe towards like a lifestyle in which I'm not necessarily thinking about myself, number one. Like those sorts of things are things I think we can get out of the book and that some Christians should think about, like
Hmm.
not ceding control of Revelation over to people who are going to be like, oh, this is about, the um the
About
UN or
yeah, right.
whatever. Yeah,
Or
yeah.
attacking Iran or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that this is more not about like justifying political plans, but it's about attuning the individual to God, the Lamb, you know, and the
Hmm.
world around them. So,
Yeah, so I had a question. Does the gender fluidity, the ambiguous nature of gender uh, for the lamb and for other images, is that an invitation or whether is that an invitation for us to encounter sort of the complexity of what's going on, the ambiguousness of what's going on, our relationship with empire, you know,
yeah.
we struggle with that too, so much about what how do I relate to these dynamics? Am I in this side or that side? And I'm sure it was that way for them in that
Yeah.
in that era. Um, it
Yeah.
was that intention? Is that just the way we interpret it, or is that sort of? Do you think there was any intent on John's part to provide looking at
Yeah.
things in an ambiguous way? Or
Yeah, I don't think he was probably intentional about it. Because I do think um, at times he's using ancient understandings of masculinity to talk about what it means to follow the lamb. So he will,
yeah,
like in the letters to the seven communities, he'll use very traditional image of masculinity. And I compare it to thinking about ancient gymnasiums, which were
oh
really
right,
big
yes,
deal in Asia Minor.
yeah,
In this context, the gymnasium's at the center of the city. It's about being a good citizen. It's really an important thing. Um, and I think John is using the language of ideal manhood because that means
hmm,
being an ideal person in antiquity.
yeah.
And so,
Oh, having self-restraint, for example, and
yeah,
things like
like
yeah,
all of that's about being a good person.
yeah,
Of course, in that period, you could only do that fully if you were a man.
uh-huh,
Um, and a citizen man, like somebody who's not enslaved, somebody who's not,
Yeah.
like you can only embody this if you're an elite and male. And he's using that kind of language and imagery to call people to be kind of their best disciples of
Right.
Christ or their best
Right.
selves. But then he's changing what that looks like, and saying it's not this thing, which is traditional masculinity. I don't necessarily think he would say that's traditional masculinity.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's talking in those terms. He's just talking
Yeah.
about being a good person and then, you know, following the lamb and what following looks
Right.
like. And following then looks like things that kind of subvert the ancient understanding of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that that's a conscious kind of decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's an effect of the text. And it's not the only ancient text that does that kind of work. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ancient martyrdom accounts, you see something similar where, and John anticipates them, where you see like martyrs going to their death and either female martyrs kind of embracing the idea of masculine strength and being the
Mm-hmm.
athlete in this moment, which is kind of a genderqueer moment, or men kind of embracing the willingness to die in a way,
Yeah.
um that is, it challenges kind of gender norms. And so there's a lot of things happening at this time with Christianity that potentially changes how gender's understood, um
Right.
and the gender roles that people embody. um so I don't think it's intentional, but I think it's there. And
Mm-hmm.
looking back, we can see, oh, yeah, he's talking about he wouldn't have used those terms, right? But it's a term and a phrase that we use. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
And there's a lot of thought about, well, was the Christian movement, was it, did it have more women in it, for
right.
example,
Yeah,
like widows being benefactors and things like that. So maybe he's trying to
right.
bridge that a little bit, I don't know. Or he's talking to
Yeah.
multiple audiences or
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, so there is a lot of conversation about like was this movement particularly appealing to women because
yeah.
of the fact that it didn't demand that you get married
Yeah,
married
the
right away.
remarriage, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or in Paul, when he talks about virgins remaining where they are, he's talking about young unmarried girls like not getting married,
Uh-huh.
right? Like stay how you are, don't get married. Um
Resisting the social pressure from the Romans basically
yeah,
to get married, right?
because
Yeah.
they think Christ is going to come back soon, and so they don't
Yeah.
do it. And so that creates space for then thinking for a different kind of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so then you do see these narratives about young women who resist, marriage, like Thecla and other like
Yeah.
early Christian saints, who resist marriage, um, because they're being called to something different. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Revelation is sort of in that vein in terms of it's calling people to, um, yeah, a different kind of life. And one way
Mm-hmm.
of for us understanding what's going on is to use the lens of gender to talk about that, what that
Mm-hmm.
looks like in antiquity. Um, yeah, there's this image of from a mosaic floor in Sicily, and
Uh-huh.
it's this
Oh, uh-huh.
gymnasium scene, and there's this picture of this. It's like women in a athletic competition.
Oh,
So it's
uh-huh.
a
Yeah.
really unusual image because you don't often see girls. It's probably girls in athletic competition,
Oh, okay.
but in this mosaic floor, and then there's
Is that the one where
one.
they're wearing like bikinis or
Yeah,
what
they're
look like
wearing,
bikinis? Yeah.
yeah. And the one girl is the victor. She's given the crown,
Oh,
like a
okay.
victory crown. But she also has this really awesome scar on her leg,
Oh,
which it's in this mosaic, and you can clearly see it's like, a few inch long scar,
uh-huh.
and it's got stitches. And I think that that's the vision to me of the ideal Christ follower for John. It's this, you know, young Victor who's
Yeah.
also kind of penetrated and vulnerable in this way.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think it's really interesting because he uses the language of virgin to describe those who follow Christ. And that is a term that's used for young unmarried girls.
Uh-huh.
And to me, that's just fascinating and really, if I would have realized that when I was a young girl, I think I
Yeah.
would have thought about things differently. Like like that I was the ideal. Um,
Yeah.
that's this embodiment, like this, scrappiness, this, but sometimes thought of as socially inferior, that's the
Uh-huh.
thing that is what it means to be like a true follower of the Lamb. And I love that imagery.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that because we look at ancient characters in two dimensions a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Caricatures, and last time when we spoke, I asked the question, how do we move from fear to fascination
Oh, yeah,
in this, and I was thinking that kind of identification may be one way to do it,
yeah,
to kind of fall in love with the book again.
yeah, yeah.
I know a lot of people when I've preached on it, they go, I hate that, but I hate
I
Revelation.
know.
I
I
hate
hear
it.
that so much. Yeah, yeah,
I really hate it. I was also
yeah.
thinking of Alyssa Liu, the
Hmm.
skater, and what
Yes.
is her appeal? Why is she such a? And I think it's that scrappiness, that
Yeah,
honesty, that picking herself up and doing it on her own terms. And I wonder, can
yeah,
we apply that to some of these images that you're talking about?
yeah.
Some
No,
of
I
these
think,
ancient women,
yeah,
obviously
yeah, there
some
is,
of them
there is
were.
this, yeah. Yeah, I do think about that, like as this image of the victor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, thinking about, and there is a place, and I can't remember where, I do talk about Simone Biles, and
Oh,
I do
yeah.
talk about some of that. Yeah, the importance of young female athletes, uh, and I don't know, um, and
Being
them as
examples.
victors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think John is wanting us to think about. Um, yeah, I do think that those are kind of powerful images. And I like to think about Revelation. Yeah, I hear a lot about how people don't like Revelation, and I
Yeah.
hear a lot about how from um, people in church leadership, pastors, how they don't like to, how they don't preach a Revelation, they don't teach
Yeah.
Revelation. For a while, I was doing a lot of congregational teaching on Revelation because
Uh-huh.
I love to teach about Revelation.
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I do have like a traveling kind of I've done a lot here in my community over the years for like sharing particular like visual images to understand
Uh-huh.
Revelation. And I like that kind of connecting the text to either ancient images or modern images or ideas or figures like, modern athletes, to think
Hmm.
about like this text and to think alongside of um see how these things can illuminate the text and help
Hmm.
us better understand it. And I love that kind of work. It's something I really enjoy. So I have a whole host of images if, anyone ever wants to talk
Yeah.
about it.
Well,
So
and I think that it's so important in the church today, especially to have, especially for women, but I think for men as well, is to
yeah.
realize, Priscilla,
Hmm.
told off Apollos, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That, and she's the lead in that,
Yeah.
and that, you know, and of course, Old Testament characters like
Deborah.
Deborah, Tamar,
Hmm.
Rahab, all of these. There's so many great examples of that we would like for our daughters, our female friends to uh,
Hmm.
attach to, and
Right.
instead of just taking what they've been taught.
Right. there's a colleague of mine, her name is Jennifer Bird.
Hmm.
She does a lot on YouTube, and does podcasts and stuff, but she's got a
Yeah.
really great book called Permission Granted.
Uh-huh.
And it's
Yeah.
all about saying, you have permission to take the Bible and read it, and to read it carefully and critically,
Uh-huh.
and make meaning of it. And you have permission to challenge the text,
Uh-huh.
to ask questions. I think it's a really powerful idea, the sort of inviting people into the text and saying, yeah, you can read it.
Yeah.
So I mean, John, like you mentioned at the outset, John tries to stop that at the end. He tries to say, like, don't mess with my words, or these words
Yeah,
are
right.
God.
Yeah, yeah.
But first of all, he is taking everything that he has from other parts of the Bible, like from the Hebrew Bible. So
Uh-huh.
like, I'm sorry, you are taking other prophetic texts and you are doing
Yes.
what you want with them.
Yeah.
So, you know, don't be a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And by saying don't mess with this, you're almost like asking people to do it.
Right.
Um, and it's almost an invitation. But then to make it a vision where you have people going along with you on this vision, that's also really just that's just opening it up to people in a
Yeah.
way. The whole genre opens it up.
Right.
So, he may say don't mess with it, but um every he says one thing, but everything else points to, take
Yeah.
this and you have permission to read it
And maybe
in
that's the
ways.
way we get people to love it,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
fall back in love with the
yeah.
text. And we
Or at
can't.
least fall
No, go
back
ahead.
and reading it. I would say maybe fall back in love with reading it and
Yeah.
engaging it, because because it does have violence. It is misogynistic. There are
Yes.
parts of it that are not worthy of love, but like engaging it, I think is,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the thing.
Yeah, and I don't the one thing I don't think we can leave, because you mentioned it, the vice lists.
Oh
These
yeah,
are the little laundry lists that, and of course Paul uses them. I think you even list them, don't you? You have a little list of,
where there are
you,
viceless.
yeah,
Yeah,
where there are vice lists throughout the New Testament, and
yeah,
Paul makes use of several of them, and
yeah,
John famously makes use of it twice in the end, where
yeah.
it's like it's not bad enough to have the New Jerusalem and all those awful people outside of it once. You got to do it again,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I wonder about that a bit, because when I'm discussing scripture with people who are want to use it more as a weapon, especially clobber verses, um, they they immediately go to the vice lists, right?
Yeah.
That's where they go, and I go, what makes they're tiny. They're just a few of them.
I know.
They're
Yeah.
tiny part of the Bible, but
They're
they
like
have such a
two verses. Yeah.
yeah, a couple verses here and there, but have just an outsized influence over the way people
Right.
think. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so can and I always think about that. In fact, I did a sermon on that, about the end
Hmm.
of, I go, I don't want this heaven. I don't want
Right.
the
Yeah. It doesn't look very interesting to me.
right.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
yeah, there's not much happiness in this,
Right.
especially when you're so exclusive. And it's
Right.
okay. You have permit, and I, tell the congregation,
Yeah.
you have permission to hate that part, you
Yeah. Yeah. And to disagree, right? Those are
yeah,
culturally determined lists of things that people do wrong.
yeah,
They're just, they're what you would say, like if you were describing a bad person in
yes,
antiquity.
yeah,
Um, so it's not like they're written with a lot of, I mean, I think in saying that, I don't think they're like a lot of thought is going into them. Like
no,
you
no,
have these
no,
texts that are
right.
developing these other theological ideas, and then you just have these little verses that then become, like you says, they have an outsized influence. And yeah, and then we also do import our own.
Yeah.
assumptions on these. And I do talk about, I have a colleague who is great, who his name is Eric Thomas, and
Uh-huh.
he teaches at a seminary in New York. And he has a piece on how the language that includes attention to the language of dogs, because
Yeah,
dogs are
right.
are left out. I'm like, I'm not
Uh,
going to a heaven without dogs.
without dogs,
Yeah.
no.
And he talks about how some interpreters assume that that has to do with homosexuality.
Oh,
And
mhm.
and it probably doesn't. It's probably, I mean, there are other
Right,
things. I mean, that's not the natural conclusion. That's not the most obvious conclusion. And he and Eric are, talks about how that isn't the most natural way of reading this
right,
text. But interpreters go in and they use these verses to then, forward their own sense of who's in and who's out. Um, and yeah, and so they become like even more problematic.
right, right.
Um,
Well,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
in fact, they're just devices for making arguments. And that's let's see, Beverly Roberts Gaventa, who I
yeah.
just love her Romans, she, commentary.
Hmm.
And she talks about building of an argument, that Paul's building
Hmm.
an
Yeah,
argument, and he uses that it's a literary device basically to
yeah,
have that this is what a bad person is. I'm going to lay it all on you, and then
yeah,
and contrast use that as a contrast for what a good person is. So
yeah, yeah.
maybe that's the way
No,
we should read it in Revelation as well. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just think those are the people I want to hang out with. That's the thing that Eric goes to. He's like, in his sort of queer interpretation of Revelation, then he's like, those are the people that we are going to be with.
Yeah.
And we're going to create then our own sense of the New Jerusalem, right? Um, we don't need,
Right.
and we can find power in that.
I kind of wonder, is Jesus really in the New Jerusalem, or is he hanging out with the folks
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are shoved
He's gonna go,
outside?
yeah, he'll go hang out outside with the dogs. He
Right.
loves dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just to wrap up here, I just
Yeah.
wanted to offer my thanks to you for engaging with me, for what you've written here.
Thank you.
I just I I just hope, my great hope that people will not see Christians as the enemy,
Hmm.
and that one way that we can bridge the gap is to understand that, yeah, these ancient people just were writing about their world, and it's,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we can learn from it,
Yeah.
and enjoy it.
Yeah. We should listen. And I think they have less, I think they have things to tell us. And I think though it's not a one-way conversation, right? And I
Yeah,
think um it is, yeah, it's a conversation where we
yeah,
can talk back to the text. The biblical scholar Mitzi Smith
yeah.
has a great book about womanist sass,
Yes, right.
and talking back.
Yep.
And I think that that's important, and especially for people who have been abused by these texts,
Yeah,
um, because of how they've been interpreted. Yeah, I mean, and I think that that means taking them seriously, right? Like
yeah.
you
Maybe
take
even
it
more
seriously enough.
seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, you take it seriously enough to talk to it, and to be like, hey, like what you're saying is
Uh-huh.
not does not conform to other things that you're saying, or um yeah, or there's really problematic aspects to it. So
Well, I'll use another Alyssa Liu quote and saying that um I like the struggle, or
mm,
I like the struggle, I think is what she said, because that's what life is.
I
And
love that.
yeah, and because and I feel that way about this, about
Yeah,
the Bible, is if you're not struggling with it, you're
right,
not living.
right. I agree.
It's not a living
Totally.
text that way.
Right.
It's not filled with the Holy Spirit. If the if you're not challenged, then the Holy Spirit's uh, not not in it, right? It's not a
Yeah.
living text. So Well, with
Agree.
that, is there anything else you'd like to share? Maybe would like to say, I haven't seen you on TikTok very much lately,
I know.
but you've been busy with other things, but
Yeah, I just haven't been on because of my job has taken over. And so I feel bad about that because I really enjoyed that. And
uh-huh.
uh I did try to post something yesterday, but then it didn't seem to get any views. So I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
well,
I'm doing.
TikTok is
A
I
little,
think it's yeah. I'm
yeah,
trying I'm pushing to other places too
are you?
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm really trying more on YouTube
yeah,
and Instagram and stuff.
yeah.
Uh we can definitely see you on TikTok. I think it's Lynn L. Huber, right? Is that
Or Lynn R. Huber,
Lynn R.
probably.
Huber, sorry.
Yeah,
And
and that's my web page too is linrhuber.com,
okay.
where people can find I do have a link to one of my Instagram account to my professional Instagram account, which I
Okay.
also haven't been keeping up with. But people are free to email me. There's contact information on
Yep.
that web page.
Uh-huh.
And I teach at Elon University in Elon, North Carolina, so you
Yeah.
can always find me on their website too.
Yeah, their
So,
website actually has a great bio of you and contact information. So,
yeah.
yeah, wonderful.
So I love talking about Revelation. So
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
yeah,
This is very helpful. Very
this was
helpful for
fun.
me and hopefully for a lot of people and a lot
It's
of
fun.
fun too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great.
Well, thank you. And as I always say, people say lots of things about the Bible that aren't really there. So,
Mhm.
engage with it and learn more. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.